On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
All right, everybody, before we get into this episode, I just wanted to give you a friendly reminder that this is part 2 of the interview with Brandon Golden, and that you can find part 1 on the PBSCCS website, on YouTube, on Spotify, or on iTunes. With that being said, let's get into part 2.
Don't hear, man. That's the thing is I've always said on this podcast, right? Is like pro ball strength coaches you don't hear them a lot, right? Like you don't hear them speaking a lot. You hear a lot of college strength coaches and NFL strength coaches, but there's a ton of really good strength coaches in professional baseball and really smart ones. And obviously you have a bunch of them surrounding you. So I'm glad it's been a good transition for you. And it leads me into my next talking points for us. Just what advice do you have for others in the field, and what do you think makes a strength and conditioning coach successful? Just, anything that you clearly we're talking about relationships, but what else do you got for us?
Yeah, I think for me, like the biggest piece of advice from like, I mean, anybody really, doesn't necessarily be like a younger guy, like understand like what makes you you and what makes you special and what makes you different and how you fit into a certain system and kind of like what your role is within that system. I mean, like, for example, like my role is not to train our big league players. That's not my role. I'm in Arizona at the rookie ball level, and being able to do your job the best of your ability and not always looking over your shoulder to what's next. In the college setting, that's kind of what was going on pretty much my entire career. If you look at, being a GA, that's a short-term thing. If you're there for 2 years, you have to go somewhere else. And then you're going to Charleston Southern. I had an unbelievable opportunity there to work with, it was me and Chad Scott, who's at Coastal now. And, I had football, we were doing everything. And then you get to East Carolina, and that's where when I went to school, that was a dream, your dream come true to go there. Then, you win, and then it's like, oh, well, what about the SEC? Like, there's just always those, for me, there was always like the what's next aspect of things because of the way that Emily and I set up our family, not because I didn't enjoy being at East Carolina, not because I didn't enjoy being at Charleston Southern, because I loved it. Like leaving East Carolina was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But the way Emily and I set up our family was, she's going to take care of the boys. She's going to, she's going to work from time to time. But our main goal when we got married was for her to raise our family. And knowing that, I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to follow strength and conditioning in my career, like I need to go make some stuff happen. And I think looking back now, that wasn't the best way to look at things, because now I'm 32 years old. I'm, in a place where I'm like, all right, well, God's got all this stuff under control anyways, and Jesus has a plan for what's going to happen in my life. And I can sit here and try to plan stuff until I'm blue in the face, and it's already all planned out. So like, that's the biggest piece of advice, I guess, is just to take a step back, understand what you are doing is super impactful at every place you're going to be. And even when you set things up similar to the way Emily and I did, like knowing how much of an impact you're having is enough. Like, and God's going to take care of all of the other things of, financial stability, all those other things. And that's a huge thing in college athletics and in athletics in general, is like, well, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to get that salary? How am I going to get all those things? And like, none of that matters. None of that stuff matters. That'll all work itself out. And, it took me till 32 and to figure that stuff out. But like, that's been one of the things that I've been able to reflect on over the past few months is in professional baseball, is that, my trust and salvation is in Jesus, not in being a strength coach, not in all of those things. So those are those things right there for me. What was the second part of the question? Being successful?
Let's go on this one first. Let's separate that. So I love that, dude. And the thing is, I think too many people get tied in with being a strength coach, right? Is their identity. And it's like, for me, like I've told my wife this, I've told, the people I work with, like being a strength coach with the Red Sox is just my current job, but I understand that it can be taken away at any time. It's not my identity, right? I don't go around telling people like I'm a strength coach with the Red Sox. I'm a strength coach. I'm a dude, like I'm a husband. And so I think people get tied to that identity of like, I have to work for this organization. I have to do that. I have to be here. And they don't realize that when they do that, their impact where they're at is not at its fullest. And I think for me, I've always told this, like when I was a GA, we had interns and I wasn't making, anything. I was making GA money. I was the same as you. I was an assistant getting paid as a GA. And I told them, if you have passion and you work hard and you understand your impact where you're at, the money will come, right? The money's going to come. And I've been telling my wife this too lately. It's like, if you do what you love and you're passionate about it and people can feel that you're genuinely there and your impact is strong, the money's going to come eventually, because somebody that makes money is going to see you doing that and they're going to want to pay you to be on their team, their staff, whatever. And it's refreshing to hear you say that. And it hits everybody at different points, right? Like you said, you're 32, you got kids, you're married, like, and you're just realizing now, like some people, it takes till they're 40. Some people realize it when they're 20. Like it happens for everybody, I feel like, at some point.
Yes.
And it's a point that needs to be hit. Like you are not the team you work for, right? Like that team can fire you at any time, right? And sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's not, whatever. But like if you get so tied to that, like when the day comes when you get fired, you're going to be devastated, right? Like it's just have your impact where you're at and everything else will take care of itself. And the other thing that you bring up is like the planning situation. It's like my wife and I joke about this all the time. Like we have a million different, like, well, what if this, what if that, what if, and then she's like, you know what, as a strength coach, you can't have this. Like, let's just worry about today. You know what I mean? Because tomorrow you don't know, like you don't know where you're going to live. You don't know who's going to call, whether it's for a better job somewhere or to tell you they're not re-signing you. You just don't know. So again, I agree with you. If you just take care of where you're at right now, you make your impact felt, and you're genuinely invested in people, the money will come, the success will come, the stability will come, all of that will come eventually. And again, it's easier said than done to say that when you're grinding it out and you're eating, peanut butter and jellies and you're making $1,500 a month. But if it's something you're genuinely interested in, eventually the money will come, because somebody's going to see that you're passionate about it and your impact is going to be felt. The other part of the question was, what makes a strength and conditioning coach successful?
I think the relationships. I think having a true relationship with your players, with your coworkers, with the medical staff, like with everybody, is what it all boils down to. Because like you said, like kind of to that same point, like this is all going to fade away at some point. Like whether you work 15 years in the big leagues, I work 15 years in the AZL, or whatever the case may be, like this is all going to come to an end. And to me, like the biggest success is like when people talk about me or you, it's like, oh, that's a good person. Like that's a person like I enjoy being around. He had an impact on my life in this situation. And like if you have those relationships and truly care about people, and to be honest, I think it starts at home. Like the success of like having a great, for me, having my relationship with God right, having my relationship with Emily right, my relationship with my boys. Like if my house is taken care of, then I can go leave my house and then impart, wisdom and, relationships on other people. But if that is not taken care of, and it hasn't been in the past, like, and it's rock solid now, and now I can go out and, do those things. So I would say the biggest success is being able to, and here's a great example, being able to have lasting relationships with people, regardless of where you're at, regardless of how long you worked with them or whatever the case may be. Perfect example, my oldest son, Hudson, he just turned 4. He was in Turner Brown's wedding, who was our shortstop at East Carolina. Like, he stood right next to Turner, in between Turner and his dad, he was the ring bearer as he got married. Like, it's probably the coolest thing that's ever happened to me as a coach and a dad. Like, my son standing up there with one of my former players who I coached every single day, who I was all like hard on, and went through the ups and downs of life with. Like, and I think the people that haven't experienced college baseball, and you're with those guys pretty similar to what it seems like from an affiliate standpoint. Like, you're with them every day. You're traveling. Like, I was with them more than any coach, at any college, because of the NCAA rules and all that stuff. And for him to ask Hudson to be in his wedding, like, that's success. Like, that's cool. But that's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, I love what you say there, is going through the ups and downs of life, right? And as you said, like, I would say college is pretty comparable to that affiliate life of, like, riding the buses together and getting into the hotel at 3 a.m. and going to the stadium, and you're just together so much that it can't all be good, right? And I think sometimes people, like, make certain jobs, like, glamorous in their minds, like, oh, I'm gonna get to the big leagues, it's gonna be amazing, and like, the reality is it's hard. Some days it's hard. It's not all good. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and, like, there are ups and downs of life, and the big thing is we're dealing with athletes, but we're dealing with humans. We're dealing with people, and people have good days. They have bad days, right? And, like, you have to be able to navigate all of those, because you're going to be together regardless, right? Like, if the guy's having a bad day, like, he's not just going to disappear. Like, he's got to come to the ballpark. He's got to play, and he's going to come back tomorrow. And so being able to navigate all of those is I agree, is very successful. Just being able to be a good person and help people. And the other thing is, for me, like, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you build good relationships, right? To the point that, like, you say, oh, if you work AZL 15 years, I work big leagues 15 years. To me, that doesn't matter, right? Like, if you're a good strength coach, you're a good strength coach. Whether you're high school, D1, D2, D3, big leagues, like, me being in the big leagues doesn't mean I'm a good strength coach. It's just a product of putting in hard work and a lot of luck, right? I was in the right place at the right time. Like, but it again, it goes back to, like, the logo and the title. Like, you aren't that person, right? Like, I'm, you know what I mean? It's just what I do right now, right? And like you said, eventually it's all going to fade away. It's going to get taken away from us. And you said it way back at the beginning of the podcast, like, baseball was here way before us, and it's going to be here way after us. Like, we're just a small part of that. And as you said, I want to be remembered as just somebody that people like, damn, Chris was a good dude. I like that guy. He helped me, right? He put my goals in line. When he came to the field every day, he wanted to help me do my best. That's it. That's all I want to be remembered as. And I think a big point, like you said, is if you have your home life taken care of, your job life is that much easier, right? Like, you see it. Sometimes people come in and their home life is not great. They're fighting with their wife. They're fighting with their kids. And it rubs off on players. Players see it. They're like, that guy's off today. But if you leave home and you're, like, smiling, and, hey, you say goodbye to your wife, and you're in a good spot, and you feel great, and you get some time with your kids or your dog, and then you go to the park and, like, you're feeling good, it rubs off on people. So I agree with you. I think having that home situation taken care of will help your job situation be taken care of as well.
100%. You feel, I told Emily, like, all the time, like, when I feel like I have her support and the boys are in a good spot, like, I feel unstoppable. Like, I feel like I can go and take over the world. Like, it's like this unbelievable feeling that, like, if you don't have it lined up, like, you just haven't experienced yet. Like, and it's a super fun thing. And I think, like, even when I'm not working games, like when I've been doing some rehab stuff, we'll take the boys up there, and, like, the guys see Hudson running around throwing rocks in the pond and stuff. And it's just another way to, like, without even really noticing that you're, like, you're showing them what it looks like to be also a dad. Like, I'm not wearing any Dodger stuff when I was out there, like t-shirt, shorts. I'm playing catch with Hudson. Like, he's throwing rocks, like, getting foul balls out of the pond and stuff. He came back around, like, all cool stuff. And like, you just look over and your players are, like, smiling. Like, doesn't matter if they're from Venezuela or from Iowa. It doesn't matter. Like, they're all looking at you like, man, that's cool. And, like, that's also a part of teaching and developing young men. It's like, they see that, and though they may not consciously think about it, like, subconsciously they're like, oh, that's what it looks like to be a dad and husband. Like that, it's also a huge part of it because baseball is going to end for them too at some point in time.
Yeah, for me, one of my favorite days so far this year was our family day. Just after the game, everybody's families was just out on the field, taking pictures, hanging out, throwing balls around with each other. Like some of the dogs were running around. Like you get to see the players in a certain light every day as competitors, as warriors, as baseball players. And then you take a step back and you see them as a dad and as a husband and running around and, like you said, in just shorts and a t-shirt, not their baseball uniform. And you're like, these are just people. Like they're just really good at a game. They're really, really good at the game. That's what it is. And, so it's cool, man. It's really cool that you're having a good first year in pro ball and you're able to balance all of that stuff out. And I know how important family is for you. So it's good that all of that is lining up well. My next question for you, what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
This was a tough one for me. I don't think there's many things that like I could sit here and think of or say that hasn't been established in strength. Like we're not reinventing the wheel at this point in time. I think not that people would think it's crazy, but like for me, it's like how can we make what we do extremely well less subjective? Like to me, like I'm kind of interested in more like, not necessarily more, but like at this point in time in my career, like how can I be more involved in some of the sports science stuff with, our force play jumps, like any of those things, BBT, whatever case may be. That may be something like I enjoy the coaching. I love relationships. I love all of those things. But to me, that's how we can push this game forward at the big level, but also at the acute level of like within our own organization, with our own players. That may be something people don't necessarily connect with, is like some of that sports science and some of the data aspect of things. And again, that's not the end all be all, but it's something that piques my interest, and it's something that I think could be something to be able to contain and help with that work-life balance as well. So that may be something that people may think is a little different.
Now, one of the things, this is very subtle that you said, but one of the things I've been noticing with people that I talk to lately that I consider in high regard, smart, well-established, whatever, is that they say in my current moment in my career, right? Like, it's really interesting that like, 5 years I was really interested in this topic. Yeah. Now I'm interested in this. And like, I talk with one of our guys, like, I'm really, really invested in learning about rehab right now and like honing in on those rehab skills. And then you talk to somebody else, like, I'm really interested right now in VBT, right? And I think sometimes people get like too pigeonholed, right? Like they're like, I'm a VBT guy, I'm a West Side guy, I'm a tier system guy. It's like, you can learn about that. And then, hey, guess what? I'm really curious in sports science now. So I'm going to read about, like, right now for me, I'm really interested in like advanced metrics in baseball and like talking with our hitting coaches and our pitching coaches and like just learning all that stuff, right? Like I've beat the strength and conditioning horse down now. Like I understand programming, I understand velocity-based training. So right now it's like learning those metrics, learning some of the science stuff, learning how all of that mixes. But as you said, like it's right now in my career, right? Like I have the right to be interested in whatever I want. Like I don't have to, I think sometimes people like, I'm a VBT guy and I will not look at anything else. And like, there's so many good ideas around them and they're like this, right? Yeah. They got the tunnel vision and it's like, man, if you just brought a couple of these things in, it would take your program to the next level, but you're so stubborn. So it's cool to hear you say that. And again, I think a lot of people that I regard very highly are like that. They're just, all right, well, I'm gonna learn everything I possibly can about this. And I'm gonna keep the things that I think are relevant in the back of my mind, and then I'm gonna move on to the next subject, and I'm gonna learn as much as I can about that. And I think for me, like the learning process is fun, right? Like, yeah, my wife bought me a ukulele. I've got no musical skill, but I've learned how to do it. And it was like, because I was trying to teach myself something new, when I'd go to work, like I felt sharper, right? Like, because I was just always challenging my brain. And then, I got that proficiently, and then it's like, all right, what else can I do? Like I've been learning Spanish. Like I think lifelong learning is a very valuable trait in successful people. And it's not always necessarily just more strength and conditioning techniques, more this, like it's the peripheral stuff of the game of your job that takes you over the top.
No doubt. Yeah, that's where I think there's so much value in a lot of the sports science stuff that, yeah, I'm fired up about. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it.
So going off of that, what continuing education resources do you have for us? Either books that you'd recommend, seminars you've attended, podcasts that you listen to. Lay it on us, man.
Yeah, let me see, I got right here. So the Applied Principles of Optimal Power Development by Matt Schmarzo and Matt Van Dyke have been huge for me, especially when I was developing like my system at East Carolina for like the VBT aspect of things. And even now, as I'm, my bosses and coordinators are letting me run our movement and strength camp for fall instructs, which is huge. I'm super, super grateful and excited for that. And we're going to do some force plate testing and some of those things. So I'm trying to, dive into some of that stuff as well. Right here next to me, I have the NSCA's Essentials for Sports Science. And it's like, all right, well, my off-season goal is like get certified with that sports science thing. And if I want to, like you were saying, like if I want to have that knowledge of it, then I need to be educated in it. I need to have, that backing behind it. So I would say those two are super cool. As far as a seminar to attend, we're having the Dodger Strength and Conditioning Symposium in LA, December 4th and 5th. And like you said, the masterminds of that Dodger OLO machine, we're going to be rocking and rolling with Brandon McDaniel, Travis Smith, Eric Yavrone, and Brian Stoneberg. Like every time I talk to those guys, like the way their minds work is super impressive. And, and the one thing that's been challenging for me is like this year going into the rehab side of things of, all right, so we're going to develop a, two-hand plyo progression for a guy who has X injury and coming back from that injury. And, coming in, I'm like, man, I got a pretty good understanding of this rehab thing. I've had guys that have had strains or elbows, whatever the case may be, and we've come back and they've been successful. And then, I'm sitting here going through everything with Stoney, and he's like, yeah, but did you think about this, this, and this? I'm like, oh, wow. Look, and the way his brain goes, and I'm like, that's special stuff. So those guys are going to be in full force out there in LA in December. So if people can get to that, that'd be a good one to go to for sure. As far as podcast though,
hit it. No, I hit it. I was just gonna put a plug in before you went podcast. That symposium is gonna be awesome. Just anybody listening, just sorry to cut you off, but awesome. It's gonna be really good.
I'm excited to be out there. And a cool thing for me is that's gonna be my first time like inside Dodger Stadium. Like,
really?
Emily's cousins live in Playa del Rey, so like we've been out there for Christmas and been able to see LA, and I've seen Dodger Stadium, but like that's gonna be a super cool experience for me. Like being able to go in and having those guys drop knowledge and us be able to kind of communicate about whatever it is they decide we're rocking and rolling on our end before we get that symposium rolling. It's gonna be special. Podcast, really, I mean, this one for me, I've listened to it for a long time. Even back in early on in my college days of this podcast has been able to teach me a lot of things and kind of give different perspectives. So guys that are in college, like listen to this, take note of what's going on, because you never know. Now I feel like more than ever I've noticed a lot of people coming from the college sector into professional baseball and being able to understand the difference between a 7-day and a 5-day. And then you have guys go from a 5-day to a 6-day, and then the next day they're on a 7. Like all the moving parts in professional baseball, like that you can learn from anybody's experience and just apply it to kind of your situation.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate the support, man. It's awesome that you've been listening.
Yeah, as far as strength and conditioning goes, this is the one I listen to. The only other podcast that I really listen to is the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Investing podcast. Like I'm huge into real estate investing and trying to get some passive income as a guy who doesn't, has a family and doesn't have a lot of money like saved up. Like it's been something we've been able to kind of endeavor on, and it's been a cool thing. So people that want to figure out some side hustle or some retirement plans, like that's a a good place to start for sure.
It's becoming a popular thing in strength and conditioning, man. Financial literacy, it really is.
Yep.
Dude, we've been at this a long time here. It's been really, really good. I want to finish with a lightning round, and then I promise I'll let you go.
Do it.
Four questions, maybe five, probably five. I'll add one in. As long as short answers as you want.
Yeah.
First one, who is your biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so this one early on, Ryan Billings. He's the head strength coach at High Point University when I interned there for a year and a half, and he just taught me so much about how strength and conditioning was going to run. How just so many. My hair used to be long. Hey man, you've been here for a year. This is great. You've done a great job. If you're gonna come back next year, we need to cut your hair. I said, awesome. Let's do it. So he pulled out clippers and he shaved my head in the office, and he thought that was the coolest thing ever. And that entire staff of Tim Wright, who was at Wake Forest for a while, and Andrew Crossley, who was the previously the head strength coach at High Point. Those guys took me under their wing and taught me a lot. They laid a super solid foundation, and really a guy that I think we've all had kind of a mentor that we've never worked with, but kind of always talked to and kind of been around and had opportunity. Cross have passed a lot, and for me, that's Dr. John Waggle with the Royals. First met him when I was a GA. Again, back to New York. Like he was the head strength coach with basketball at DePaul, and they came in and got to spend some time there. And then we were at the Central Virginia Sports Performance thing out there in Richmond with Jay and all that stuff, and got to hang out, have a beer, have some barbecue, and just talk. And this transition to professional baseball, even when there was opportunities before this with the Dodgers, he's always been a sounding board, and he's always kind of pumped me up, even when I think it's also cool to see how other people view you and how they view your career and some of the things you've done, because I think it's easy to be oh well, I'm working hard and I'm doing all this stuff, but John always had a way of every time I got off the phone with him, I'd be like, damn, maybe I do have a chance to do some pretty cool stuff in this game, and he's always been that for me, so it's been pretty special.
One piece of equipment to train with, what would it be?
Kettlebell.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Yeah, this one's pretty cool. Being saved by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ would obviously be, for me, is number one. Marrying my wife, just over 6 years ago, and then the birth of our two sons. Those three things. We kind of touched on it a little bit ago, but as all of this fades away, whenever the day comes that I do get called home and I'm not living anymore, when I stand in front of God, to me, there's three human beings that their opinion truly matters, and it's in my wife and my two sons, of how was I a husband, how was I a father, and everything else. It's what God says at that moment in time. And to me, that's the paramount of my being, and like you said, what I'm trying to do, and that's who I am. You know what I mean? That's really who I am. And then professionally, up until this point, hosting regionals in Greenville, man, that place was rocking and rolling in 2018, 2019, winning the regional in 19 and getting to go play in a super regional. Those guys worked their tails off, and that's something that I'll never forget that. And yeah, just the relationships that I've been able to build here. And you mentioned learning Spanish. I came in and spring training, and I understood Spanish a little bit. I took Spanish in elementary school and touch in middle school and stuff like that. So I could como estas and all of those things. But you're learning how to actually speak and have conversations. There'll be times where a guy who doesn't really speak English at all will be asking either a player or our other performance coach a question. I'll just jump in and it's just boom. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even know I know how to say that. It's pretty cool how those guys have taught me things. And I think showing them that vulnerability, at stretch lines, I'm trying to learn Spanish, as we're stretching, all of those things, they see that, they cling to that, and they're like, all right, this is the guy I can trust. So that's been pretty cool so far.
Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
Teaching of some sort, whether it's a college professor or high school teacher.
Last one, I didn't have it on the notes. Do you have a favorite food spot in Phoenix yet?
Favorite food spot. There's a really cool place. So we live in Litchfield Park, like right down the road from Camelback Ranch. Park Cafe, right on Old Litchfield Road, is super cool. There's palm trees lining, orange trees. Like it feels like you're in LA or somewhere tropical, even though it's 115 out. But they got the misters going. Super cool place for brunch, like chorizo, eggs, burritos. Like that's our spot.
We'll talk off camera. There's some good spots to eat out there. Brent, I can't thank you enough for coming on, being open, being honest, being transparent with me, man. It's been really, really good. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, where can we get more? Social media the best place, or is there a better spot?
Yeah, social media is fine. At Coach B Golden on Twitter and Instagram. And then my email is bgolden@ladodgers.com. Have a website that I haven't done much with lately that I probably need to get back on from like a blogging standpoint. It was just a way of like for me to keep up with like what was going on and like track some of my thoughts. But coachbgolden.com is something that we can communicate through that as well. And I'm saying that just for more of accountability standpoint, so I can start writing my stuff down again and kind of keeping that stuff rolling. So
I'll be looking forward to your content, man. Dude, thanks again for coming on, and we'll catch up real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
All right, everybody, that concludes part 2 of our interview with Brandon Golden. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoyed part 1 as well. Between the two, there's a ton of really good information to take. Again, the main thing being the velocity-based training in part 1, and then all of the relationship aspects that we discuss in part 2. The 3 things that I took from Brandon in this episode: relationships will last longer than jobs, educate yourself in a number of different topics, and understand what makes you special and find ways to maximize that. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.